Hi again, historians. We're going to finish up notes 5 from Unit 4, Becoming a World Power. We just talked about the Spanish-American War, going on to liberate Cuba from Spain. Okay, we're going to continue. We had talked about how it was a splendid little war. Americans owned sugar plantations in Cuba and Puerto Rico. Spain controlled both of those islands, contrary to the Monroe Doctrine, which told Europe to stay out of the Western Hemisphere. And the U.S. fought the Spanish-American War to give Cuba its independence. Okay, we talked about how only 345 Americans died fighting in combat in the Spanish-American War, but 5,000 soldiers died of diseases. There's a lot of different diseases that they were exposed to in that climate. In 1903, a treaty with Cuba was signed so the U.S. could lease land and establish the naval base at Guantanamo Bay. Okay, so that brings us to the Philippines, which also, now the Philippines is on the other side of the globe, and it's actually in the Pacific Ocean, and this too was under Spanish authority. Remember, Spain was considered an empire in that day. A lot of European countries like France and Britain and Portugal and Spain were still participating in that imperialistic efforts of trying to take over other parts of the world and use those as their colonies. Philippines was a part of that. So on the other side of the globe, the Philippines were also under Spanish rule. Before Congress had declared war with Spain, Theodore Roosevelt, who was Assistant Secretary of the Navy before he resigned and went to fight with the Rough Riders, he had sent a telegram to Admiral George Dewey of the U.S. fleet in the Pacific Ocean, and he ordered him to attack the Spanish in the Philippines if the U.S. declared war with Spain. So not only were we fighting for Cuba's independence from Spain, and also Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. On the other side of the world, we were fighting against the Spanish for the Philippines. Now, Filipinos, native people to the Philippines, had been trying to gain independence from Spanish rule for a long time. They were led by General Emilio Aguinaldo. So they were really thankful when the United States had said, well, we'll help get Spain out of there for you. Filipinos attacked the Spanish army and government officials. 5 days after the United States declared war with Spain, Admiral Dewey's fleet arrived in Manila, the capital of the Philippines, and they just unleash on the Spanish fleet that was there. Okay, Spain's old wooden ships were no match. There's Dewey right there. For America's modern steel ships and well-trained navy, Dewey was able to blockade the port of Manila. Spain was pretty much powerless there. The Filipinos were excited. They believed the U.S. Navy was there to help them gain their independence. So when Spain surrendered to the Americans, the U.S. negotiated to buy the Philippines from Spain in the peace treaty. Congress voted to annex the Philippines, and now it was under American control. So Filipinos were a little bit taken aback. They thought that we were going to be able to help them gain their independence, and we said, no, we'll help you get rid of Spain, but now we're going to basically govern you. So it was a really useful location for American businesses and the military in the ocean. In the Pacific Ocean specifically. The Filipinos were angry. They felt Americans betrayed them and lied to them. They had fought American occupation, so then they ended up fighting American occupation for 3 years. Both sides became increasingly brutal to one another. The U.S. eventually granted the Philippines independence, but it wasn't until 1946, after World War II. And we'll talk about the Philippines and the United States' role in the Philippines in World War II when we talk about fighting on the Pacific front in that war, but that'll be in our next unit. So in your notes, please write for the Philippines that the U.S. fought to end Spanish rule of the Philippines, and then we annexed the Philippines so that we could have a naval base in the Pacific, which comes in really handy, but also made the Filipino people very upset. All right. In 1900, President McKinley was reelected. This time he chose Theodore Roosevelt to run as his vice president. Americans considered Roosevelt a war hero because of his success with the Rough Riders. There he is in his uniform. I just love the photos of Theodore Roosevelt. He just exudes charisma, and I think he's a pretty awesome dude to study. So for Theodore Roosevelt, first you're going to write that he was Assistant Secretary of the Navy and Vice President for McKinley. Okay, he was a Rough Rider during the Spanish-American War. He wasn't just a Rough Rider, he was the Rough Rider. He's the guy who started that regiment of tough dude fighters. Okay, in September of 1901, President McKinley was shot and killed by an assassin. He was a socialist immigrant who claimed that the president was the leader of a corrupt government that was the enemy of hardworking people, and he shot him 3 times up close, pretty much. He actually survived for about a day and a half. They looked like he was going to get better and maybe pull through and survive, but then they discovered gangrene in one of the wounds, and he was a goner. He died September 14th, 1901, and that very same day, President Roosevelt was sworn in. He became known as the Progressive President. He enforced the Sherman Antitrust Act to break up the monopolies. He passed the Pure Food and Drug Act to protect consumers, and he helped expand the number of national parks to protect the environment. So would you write down that he became president in 1901? He also had a really large family, and he was a family man. So it's just another one of those great photos of him. You can just see how happy he is. As president, Roosevelt felt there was a need to have a canal that would link the waters of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. We have territories in Puerto Rico, and we have territories in the Pacific here in Guam and the Philippines, and he felt that, it's just too much to ask a ship to go all the way around South America or the other side of the world to get to the Pacific Ocean. So he called on Congress to approve funding for a canal. Here's the president. He wants a canal. Please put a canal here to create a shortcut for our Navy ships. And he wanted it to go right through this. This is called an isthmus. An isthmus is a geographic term referring to a narrow point of land that connects 2 larger bodies of land. So it's surrounded by water on 2 sides, and it's just a narrow land bridge. And he felt that the United States could easily build a canal. It would only be about 50 miles long, and that it would take no time at all. And it would offer a quick and easy way for our ships. See, let's watch that again. There it goes. To get from one ocean to another. This would allow us to better defend our new territories. Congress approved the funding for a canal, and they approached Colombia, which is the South American country right here that controlled this area at the time, this isthmus. Colombia refused the offer. This did not make President Roosevelt happy. He was really upset about it, but he didn't let it stop him. He was kind of feisty that way. He sent a warship to the Panama Canal, knowing that the Panamanian people who lived there wanted independence from Colombia and wanted to rule themselves. So the U.S. Navy sent ships, and within a couple of days of this U.S. ship arriving, a revolution started in Panama. Fancy that. And the rebels won with help from the U.S. Navy. They won independence from Colombia. So now Panama controls the isthmus, and we negotiate with them instead, and we get the right to build the 51-mile canal. And this kind of is an example of President Roosevelt's favorite quote. He said he liked to. He said it was an African quote that he embraced. It says, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." So there's his big stick. There's a photograph of the Panama Canal. The U.S. went to work sending workers and supplies to Panama and built the 51-mile canal. Construction was difficult. Workers caught exotic illnesses like malaria because of the climate down there. But by the time the Panama Canal was built, Roosevelt had left office and was no longer president, but it still served its purpose. Roosevelt's controversial big stick diplomatic methods remained a sore spot, caused a lot of tension between the United States and Latin American countries. They didn't think it was very nice of us to come in and kind of wield our power over them. In 1921, Congress apologized to Colombia. It's like, sorry for starting an uprising and taking your land. They sent them $25 million for the trouble that they had caused with Panama. Ultimately, the people of Panama grew to resent the United States being in control of the canal zone, and we actually controlled the canal zone up until recently, in the year 2000, that we gave the canal zone over to the nation of Panama to govern. So there's a map of the length of the canal, kind of dips down and goes up and around and then through. Okay, the United States encouraged Panama to break away from Colombia. Roosevelt called for a canal to create a shortcut between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So there you go, and you can see that this is a blown up, close-up view of this little part of the isthmus. So that finishes up today's set of notes on becoming a world power. Have a great day.